So you have a deep background in football. You play college football. You were a Division I wide receiver. Would you trade for Antonio Brown? Do you think he's worth it? Yeah. So yes, not without a doubt.
Without a doubt, you trade for Antonio Brown.
Why?
Because of what he brings to your team.
What about my argument? So what I would say is that I don't want to pay him the money. I think he's overpriced. I mean, you look at, I'll make the same argument I made in my video about this. I said, look, Antonio Brown didn't make the playoffs. Odell Beckham Jr. didn't make the playoffs.
No quarterback.
Julio Jones didn't make the playoffs. Jarvis Landry didn't make the playoffs. The only guy of all the top receivers in the NFL, the only guy that made the playoffs was DeAndre Hopkins.
And that was a wild card game, right?
Yes. So how do you speak to that? To say that being a great receiver doesn't necessarily mean you make the playoffs. So is he worth the $20 million, whatever it costs to sign Antonio Brown?
It is, because what he can do for your offense. When you look at those players that you mentioned that are great receivers, Jarvis Landry plays for the Browns. That's your answer right there. Why didn't they make the playoffs? He plays for the Browns.
Yeah.
Julio Jones, the Falcons just struggled this year, straight up.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not
Their
really
defense
any other
struggled.
way.
Their offensive play calling was tough. They fired their offensive coordinator.
Exactly. And so when you don't have a functional offense, Julio Jones still excelled. It's just the team as a whole didn't.
Yeah.
Another great receiver, like I was talking about, Michael Thomas. I mean, they made it there.
Yeah.
Who was the other receiver?
Odell Beckham Jr. didn't make the playoffs.
Odell Beckham Jr. You have Odell Beckham Jr., you have Evan Ingram, you have Sterling Shepard, and Saquon Barkley.
A lot of pieces on the Giants offense.
Pieces, but then you have Eli Manning. There goes your offense.
So you're saying
there goes your playoff chances.
you didn't have a quarterback in New York. It's why
They did not have a quarterback in New York.
Okay, so I respect everything you're saying. You're saying that there's reasons why they didn't make the playoffs. It's not their play.
Right.
But you can still say they're not a difference maker. And how about this? So not only is it, I would say that not only do you have to pay Antonio Brown the money, you also have to trade for him. You give something up and then you pay him a ton of money. Why is that worth it? What does he do? What does he bring to the table? Why is it worth it to you?
He opens up your whole entire offense, is what he does. And you see that with the Steelers.
Yeah.
Because they had Juju Smith-Schuster on the other side, who had actually more receptions than Antonio Brown this year. But you know that it's not Juju helping Antonio, because Antonio's been doing this since before Juju got in the league.
Antonio demands more attention from the defense.
He demands more attention. It opens up the other side. It opens up the run game because the linebackers can come. They have to drop back, right?
Yeah.
They have to be aware of the hook. They have to be aware of the low hole. They have to be aware of the high hole, and they have to understand, where Antonio Brown is. You can't just say, forget it. He's not going to catch the ball, or he's not coming over the middle because he's scared to catch the ball kind of deal.
And so the defense,
they can't commit to a run game. Yeah. And then you also add Le'Veon Bell, who's just dynamic. It makes it very, very hard on a defense. But Antonio Brown opens that up for you.
So if a team like the 49ers or the Colts brought in Antonio Brown,
it
would open up their offense because the defense says, I got to commit more guys and more attention to Antonio Brown. And while we're focusing on Antonio Brown, other guys get open. George Kittle with the 49ers.
Marquise Goodwin.
Yes.
Dude's an absolute barn burner in terms of getting
Who's your guy
open
from
over
Portland
the top.
State with the 49ers?
He's not from Portland State. He's from Eastern Washington.
That's right. But he's from Portland. He grew up in Portland.
Yeah, he grew up in Portland.
Yes.
Kendrick Bourne.
Yes.
So to me, Kendrick Bourne is like a Juju Smith-Schuster in terms of route running ability and getting open.
Yeah.
If you have Antonio Brown on the other side of Kendrick Bourne's stats are going to go through the roof. George Kittle's production is probably going to go down just because
there's only so much to go around.
There's only so much to go around.
But he might get more quality catches, right?
Right, but now you have to worry about Marquise Goodwin way over the top. You've got to worry about Kittle underneath, and you've got to worry about Antonio Brown in the middle area, and then you've got to worry about Kendrick Bourne, who can play both out of the slot and in the outside. That's almost impossible.
So even if George Kittle's volume of numbers go down, his production wouldn't stop.
No, his production wouldn't stop. No, because there's just too much offensive firepower. And in Kyle Shanahan's offense, that it'd go insane. Because you look at players like Mohamed Sanu and Trevor Gabriel, when they were on the Falcons with Julio Jones, their numbers were through the roof because they had Kyle Shanahan, Matt Ryan. They had a bunch of offensive weapons.
Yeah.
Gabriel with the Bears, where is his stats gone? Mohamed Sanu, without Kyle Shanahan, what has he really done?
Without the system in place, his production's gone down.
Exactly, but whose hasn't is Julio Jones.
Yeah.
So that just kind of tells you the caliber of the receiver. And then going back to Antonio Brown, yes, you trade for him because no matter what, his production is going to be there.
The thing I can't get over with Antonio Brown, because I'm actually on board. It makes sense, right? He makes your offense better wholeheartedly. The problem is, how do you logistically trade for him? What do you have to give up? 2 draft picks, 2 first-round picks, and a second? You don't want to give up. If you're the 49ers, for example, you don't want to give up George Kittle to get Antonio Brown. It's redundant.
You wouldn't. Right.
No. So like, how do you? I still am not convinced because my problem is it's not just signing him in free agency. You got to trade for him.
You got to trade for him, which would probably include draft picks. The logistics of it, how you're going to do it, I don't know. But I'm trading for.
If the 49ers can trade for him, they should.
If the 49ers can trade for him, they should.
If the Colts, what about the Colts? Because the Colts have T.Y. Hilton, who we were talking before the show. Right. You said T.Y. Hilton and Antonio Brown are very similar receivers.
Yeah, they're very, very similar receivers. Colts have a decent O-line, a good run game. You got an excellent quarterback in Andrew Luck.
And a good scheme.
So Antonio Brown and T.Y. Hilton, to me, like I said, are very, very similar receivers in terms of size, build, the way they run routes, things like that. So when you add another player like Antonio Brown to T.Y. Hilton, it's not a bad thing for the team, but what I think is they need a more physical presence at receiver. Because you have Jack Doyle at tight end. I believe it's Jack Doyle.
Yep, Jack Doyle. And then Eric Ebron, the blocking tight end, basically.
So you have pieces in your receiving core. What I think they're missing is that that bigger body outside on the receiving core.
A better fit would be a guy like, what's the guy in New Orleans?
Michael Thomas.
Michael Thomas would be a better fit with the Colts than a Antonio Brown. Because you already have an Antonio Brown type role with T.Y. Hilton.
Exactly.
What's a good pair? So a good pairing with Antonio Brown would be who? What receivers?
With if I could pick any receiver in the league?
But what body type? So you have Antonio Brown, he gets under the ball. He's not a big 6'5" guy that goes and catches jump balls, right?
That's also a technique. A little side note about receivers.
Go ahead.
Antonio Brown knows how to keep the fight on the ground. You very rarely see him go up for a jump ball or a contested jump ball and rip it out of somebody's hands. What you see is him using his body positioning, slowing down so that the ball is always coming over the top or at a position where he can get it, but the defender can't.
He manipulates his body positioning so he doesn't have to go for a jump ball.
Exactly.
Interesting.
And that's a big piece. What was I saying though?
What kind of body type would you pair him with? So he's not a 6'5" physical possession receiver. Is that the kind of guy you'd want to pair Antonio Brown with?
Yeah, you want a bigger target. You want your sideline target, which you do have if you say he did go to the 49ers. You can put George Kittle outside. He can do that. I mean, the obvious pairing would be somebody like a Michael Thomas or like a Julio Jones, bigger guys like that, or DeAndre Hopkins, honestly, because DeAndre Hopkins is extremely physical. But as a receiving core, you just, as much as I'd like to say size or height doesn't matter in playing a receiver, in your core somewhere you got to have that taller, more physical guy.
Oh, I hate doing this. It makes me feel uncomfortable. I really don't like self-promotion. It makes me feel like a used car salesman, but I got to do it. So if you don't know, this is my podcast, Strong Opinion Sports. It's my favorite thing in the world. And you can subscribe on iTunes, SoundCloud. You can find it on YouTube. You can find the full entire hour-long podcast on YouTube. You can also find shorter breakout clips like the one you just watched. Please do me a favor. If you like anything I had to say, maybe you hate me and you're mad about something, share this podcast with your friends. Share it on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever you want to do. Help me grow by telling your friends about this show.